How can we trust Brandon when he can't trust himself? He knew God was real, then changed his mind. If belief in God was a mistake on Brandon's part, which we are all capable of, how can we trust this 30 years of his life and not the last? You are mistaken. That is by far and away this particular commenter's best comment and the one we're going to spend 90% of the video on. But I want to be fair, because one of the things I say a lot is, hey, you're not actually contending with my arguments. And this person does leave a second comment that tries to contend, because where this comment came in is my reaction to the comments already of the video I made about Wes Huff on the concept of hell. One small point that I had in that entire video is that it is a ridiculous argument to say that people send themselves to hell. And I listed many reasons why this is fallacious, none of which, by the way, were brought up in this next comment. He says, who is forcing these people to hell? Nobody is forced to do anything. People go to hell because, and he lists one of three reasons. A, they don't want to go to heaven. B, they have not accepted the invitation to go to heaven. C, they have been deceived into thinking they follow Christ. You have not helped this situation. You have only made it worse. Yes, you did try to contend, I guess, but you didn't answer any of the other things I brought up about this point. You just kind of reasserted the weakest version of the argument. So credit for being one of the few Christians ever to be on topic in these videos. But if my buddy invites me to a dinner party and I don't go, guess what? I'm not somehow magically forced to go to the worst dinner party ever. So your option B there, that if I don't accept the invitation to go to heaven, is what, me somehow automatically sending myself to go to hell? No, of course that's God forcing it upon me. It's not the devil forcing it, is it? Is he the sovereign ruler of the universe? And it's really simple. Look, I don't want to go to hell. So if I die and go to hell, I didn't put myself there. The idea that any Christian who actually believes in the concept of hell tries to remove that responsibility from God might be the most egregious act of dishonesty in the faith. And C just proves that your God is evil because he would allow someone to burn forever because a much more powerful being possessed them and changed their thinking on things. And A is just a straw man. I don't think heaven is a great concept, but if I am truly forced with the binary choice of heaven or hell, I choose heaven. He does have a last line here about people not having the right faith or worship, that it wasn't genuine, and that I should be examined by my fruit. That's exactly what I hope you'll do as I react to this first comment. And by the way, if you're any Christian watching this and you have ever said this to someone in your life that has left the faith, I hope that you will honestly watch this. This doesn't mean that you have to concede Christianity is false. It doesn't mean that you have to support the atheist in your life for their lack of belief. But if I'm right about what I'm about to cover, you should be able to pull this out of your arsenal. This should be something that never gets said to an atheist ever again. So putting that comment back up on the screen so we know what we're working with. There's a false assumption in this comment. There's actually a few, but there's a main one here, which is that if you change your mind, you can't trust yourself. I wonder, commenter, or any Christian who thinks this is valid, have you ever changed your mind before? I am willing to bet yes, probably about a lot of things. I would go out on a limb and say that most believers watching this video have changed their mind about a scripture, an interpretation, which denomination is closest to the truth, or maybe even when they converted to Christianity. Maybe they came from Hinduism or from Islam or Mormonism, or maybe from Catholicism to Protestantism, or maybe from non-belief to belief. Does the logic hold? How could you trust yourself now that you have the correct religion, that your new denomination or your new title or your new belief is correct? I mean, I didn't even think about this ahead of time. Your logic here, if applied biblically, destroys Christianity, because it would make Paul the most untrustworthy character ever. And if I press you, I'm absolutely positive that at least a few of your serious doctrines come from Paul. So I could shut up, I could be done, and this would be dead, and it's so unbelievably obvious. But you know me, it's a comment deep dive, so we are going to peel this thing all the way down. To steelman the argument, are there people who have changed their mind about something and because of it are more unreliable? Sure. People that are really flaky and impulsive and irrational, bouncing around from belief to belief, conspiracy to conspiracy. Yeah, you might notice a pattern that makes their reputation less steady when every other week they're spouting some new thing they saw online. I get that. Do you think that's what I did with my 30-year relationship with Christianity? Or would I maybe fit better in a second category? Someone who updated their beliefs because they learned more, because they cared about the subject matter. I noticed contradictions. I noticed errors. I found better explanations. I found data that matched reality much better. And over time, and with enough evidence, I was forced to lose a belief that I once held. But your comment is treating all belief change as if it's always people in that first category. But in real life, I would argue the most trustworthy people are the ones who have been through the second category. Again, updated their beliefs based on when new information becomes available to them. And you want this. I know you want this. If you have epilepsy, I bet you're really glad that the medical community has updated their understanding of that particular disease instead of going with Jesus's version that it's demons. I'm sure you're really happy about the invention and understanding of antibiotics when you get an infection as opposed to getting your leg cut off, right? Like, again, this is so clear to see. I could give you thousands of examples here. I promise you, you are so glad and rely on so many people and systems that have changed their mind. That does not equal untrust. And also, you spoke for me that how could we trust Brandon when he can't trust himself? I don't trust myself implicitly because I know I can be wrong, because I can admit that. But because I changed my mind about something after years of research, I've actually gained a bit more trust for myself because I know, despite the personal cost, I am the kind of person that will put myself in harder situations for the sake of truth over comfort. That's just a reality. That's just a piece of confidence I get to have about myself because I've walked the walk. Doesn't make me perfect. It doesn't mean everything I will ever say from here on out is correct because I was wrong once. That would also be a fallacious assumption. But I'm not inherently untrustworthy because I did the trustworthy thing to admit when I was wrong, to say I don't know where I don't know, and to follow the evidence wherever it leads. And so if you're in my position and you're hearing these same kind of things, let me extend a little bit to you the confidence that I have, that you should have about yourself. You've earned trust. That's real intellectual humility to say of an entire lifetime, I was wrong, and then to go and pay the price for it. In fact, by your logic, the clear statement that would follow is, thus then only trust people who have never changed their mind on anything. I'm sorry, that is the last person in the world I'm going to trust, the one who has just so happened to be born into the exact right belief system that magically knows everybody else who has ever thought anything different about their particular God or any God at all is it wrong, but they're right. They get to go to heaven and everyone else deserves hell, even though they clearly cannot and will not really contend with the arguments. I mean, in this particular comment, despite the other lousy attempt, you make absolutely no argument against anything I said. You just end with another assertion. You are mistaken. You didn't show that, but we'll get to that. Let's keep moving on through this comment. Since you were speaking for me so much in this comment, you got another thing wrong. You said that I knew God was real, and then I changed my mind. I believed God was real. If you would have asked me, I would have said, yes, I know this to be true, but I'm not claiming now that I knew God was real. I didn't reject a real God. I left a belief system in a God that I found out to be falsifiable. It was a subjective kind of certainty, if you want to talk about what I thought I knew. If I said, I felt sure. But there's another category of justified knowledge. That's when you can say something like, I have strong evidence and good reason to believe X. Most Christians, when they say they know God is real, and I say this with no malice, most mean that first subjective certainty. Yes, you'll have some that claim, no, I can truly prove it is the God of Abraham. But if you could, you would, and you haven't. And also then what would you need faith for? And you already know this about people. You know that people can know things or say they know things in that subjective kind of way and be wrong. How many people just knew a few months ago that the rapture was absolutely going to happen? How many of those people had Holy Spirit confirmations, heard from God? It was revealed to them in dreams. How many people knew that they saw Mary on a piece of bread? How many people just knew that the word their pastor got, that prophecy was for them? How many people just knew that God was telling them to marry that person, but then they get divorced a year later? That can't be from God. And the other thing I haven't shown in each of those examples is when it fails, but they all fail. And I'm big enough to say that doesn't mean that they were liars. I believe they really believed in that belief. So what it means is that humans can be sincerely incorrect. They can be sincerely convinced, but still be wrong. That's not the same thing as knowledge, but that's how you're framing it, because you actually do have that belief in God. So you're willing to hand it to me, former Brandon, Christian Brandon, that it was then that I was right. It was then that what I knew was actual knowledge and not just me sincerely being incorrect. Do you see the category error here? If you think someone thinking they know something actually equals knowledge, you have a lot bigger problems than me. Like, you should immediately go help out all of the people of different denominations, like your oneness Pentecostals that know that the Trinity is false, against your Trinitarians that know that to deny the Trinity is heresy. Go help these people out if that's how you think about knowledge. The next main part of this for you is saying, if belief in God was a mistake, then how can we trust his 30 years now over the last 30 years? Sounds clever. Again, I really think you had a gotcha here, but you're just the umpteenth person this month to present a false dichotomy like it's some kind of a actual argument. This is a false choice. You're making the assumption that either my first 30 years were reliable and thus everything afterwards is unreliable, or the recent years are reliable and thus my first 30 are unreliable. And in fact, I think I'm actually giving you more credit there than you've earned in this comment. But even so, it's still so wrong. That's just not how people work. I feel a little bit redundant, but people can be sincere for 30 years and still be wrong, and then become less mistaken later, which, by the way, is all I would claim. Again, I'm not perfect. I don't know everything. I don't have answers for everything. But I do know that the particular belief I was raised in makes claims. And I know that those claims have been falsified. And thus I know that this God is false. And I see the harm of the religion all around. Not to mention the data points that I've covered about how we know this religion is harmful. And again, not to say that the religion has never done anything well. Of course it has. But that doesn't make it inherently true, and it doesn't erase the harm that occurs. So here we are. But maybe an example will help drive this home. If someone says, I smoked for the first 30 years of my life. Then I learned how bad it was, so I stopped. Would you ever say to someone, wait, wow, you did that for 30 years? Why should we trust you now in the year that you've stopped? Right? Like, as soon as you apply it to any non-abstract thing like faith, it becomes incredibly obvious how faulty this line of logic is. You wouldn't say that to them. You'd say, congratulations, good. You've updated your life based off information that became available to you, aka being a normal person living. Like, can you imagine if I said to you, let's assume for this example, you believed in Santa until you were 7, and I said, hey, hold on. I'd love to read your comment and engage with you. But bro, you changed your mind for something you believed for 7 years? You can't even trust yourself. You knew Santa was real and then changed your mind. Of course, I would never say that to you. But that's literally what you're saying to me. So hear me clear when I give you this really good advice. Past belief is not evidence of present truth. Duration of a particular belief is in no way a measure of the accuracy. You are connecting dots that simply can't connect. And also, and this goes with why long lengths of time don't mean anything. Someone could be a believer for 60 years and never think once critically about what they believe. Or someone can wrestle for 15 years of the 30. And then I bet you don't want to give them that same credit of being a Christian for 30 years. The only questions that matter about someone's current or past belief is, were there reasons for believing good? Do they hold up under scrutiny? Are they afraid of the truth of examination? I mean, there's more to consider there, but you understand the point I'm making. But that's what deconversion is. Or I should say, to be fair, that's what deconstruction is. A willingness to actually think critically and engage with the arguments for and against what you believe. That's a good thing. Anyone that tries to tell you it's not a good thing, or if you arrive at a certain conclusion after actually looking through the evidence, you were never really something, you never really believed, your voice doesn't matter, you can't be trusted, they're the ones that we need to steer clear of. If you really want to critique what I said, you end with, you are mistaken. Show me where my logic is wrong. Right now, and what I've handled so far about what you have said, or going back to that video. Because again, even though I gave you credit for talking about hell, you didn't respond to my arguments. So where is my logic incorrect? What text did I mishandle? What context did I miss? What claim did I make that was false? And how do you know? That's what I'm presenting in most of my videos. Why are the vast majority of Christians not able to do the same? And hey, you might be right. I might be mistaken. That's room I leave open. But until you can give me evidence or an argument or engagement with the reasoning I gave or a correction to a specific point, then just screaming it is meaningless. And that's all you've done. You've delivered a verdict without any evidence. So again, I want to end by encouraging people who are in the process or who have arrived where I am and are dealing with these ridiculous kinds of things from the believers in their life. Think about this for a second. Anyone who's doing this, they have it quite literally 180 degrees backwards. I am willing, you are willing to say, and for me, I'm talking about what I've done here. So I'm willing to say even publicly, I was wrong about something like really central to my life, my entire identity, my entire world. But I can also tell you, here's why I believed it. And then I can say, here's why I don't believe it anymore. And here are those arguments. Go ahead and judge them. Now you tell me, but that seems pretty transparent, which is a quality that I really hold in esteem when I'm considering who is trustworthy. But again, following the logic of this commenter, supposedly the really trustworthy person is the one who says, I've always been right. I never changed. My certainty proves the truth. I don't need arguments or evidence. That's not truth, and it's not humility. It's just misplaced confidence. Confidence is so unbelievably cheap. That is something that I have learned along this process. And I'm confident now. You're right. I mean, if you want points, I guess you could reframe this if I had shown myself to be just a horrible individual to say, hey, you were really confident before. You seem really confident now. What is your basis for your confidence now if your earlier confidence was so wrong, right? That's a little closer. But see, I can answer that. I can tell you again, well, here's why I believed what I believed. I was born into it. I was indoctrinated into it. It was at a time when my brain was still forming and these things were fed to me as truth. I wasn't allowed to question things. When I did question things, I got answers that sounded good, but I had never been taught how to critically think and I had nothing to bump it up against. I was also afraid of losing what I thought was the correct worldview. I didn't want to have to relearn morals. I didn't want to have to relearn meaning. I didn't want to mess up every relationship in my life. I didn't want to become the black sheep in my community. I didn't want to be unequally yoked for my wife and partner, the person I'm raising children with. But here's what I did find. Here's what I did see. This is what doesn't add up. These are the claims that are made. This is how we know those claims are inaccurate. Here's the contradictions and the reason why that's a problem and how we can actually know that. And again, you don't have to agree with all of that, but to act like I haven't done the work is ludicrous. So I can tell you why I'm additionally confident now in my position, because I've earned it, because I've gone through it, because it was hard to arrive here, not easy to arrive here. That doesn't make it right in and of itself, but it shows that at least my intention or motive is not misplaced. I also learned about things like the scientific method and how logic actually works, why an argument fails, why the arguments you have made are not good arguments against atheism or for Christianity. And that's why I spend the time breaking it down in this way, because I want to be able to give other people these skills. They're skills that we aren't born with and that most people in the Christian community never get a chance to hone. Let's try this all over. I have made my case today with arguments and comparison and evidence, trying to be consistent even with the logic that you present on why this argument from you not only fails for me, for the accusations you've made against me, but would fail for you, for everybody, and for your religion. If you still hold that I can't be trusted, I'm counting on you to rip out half your New Testament that is attributed to Paul. That's it. Thank you for being here. I've taken the time and I'm in a unique position because of the time I dedicate to this channel to get to be in the weeds so much. So it's not that I'm smarter, but I make it a point to be able to do two things to try to help other people. I need to know enough to be able to correctly vocalize and normalize the experience that they're going through. Is it vocalize or verbalize? I want to be able to give them words to put to it. And I want them to know that it's okay. We're all dealing with this nonsense. I think those two things help people. And that's why I do this channel. And specifically, that's why I do this series. So again, I thank you for your support in being here. I'll see you Sunday with a new video. And until then, keep thinking. I wanted to personally thank my top tiers of support: my Iconoclast, Ann, Boris, Chris, Grant, GVI, Jimmy, Joe, Kitboga, yep, the Kitboga, Matthew, Perry, and Shawn. My Humanist heroes: Chris, Craig, James, Jarrod, and Kristi. My Atheist advocates: Aquitar, Caleb, Dakota, Dan, Drew, Jeff, Jeffrey, Jeremy, Jugs, Julie, Malcom, Paul, Sparky, and Thomas, as well as all of my secular scholar patrons. Would you consider joining these fine people?